What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider alongside Brandon Crossland. Josh Birch is off again tonight. Brandon, how's it going?
Going all right, Ben. It's another great weekend in motorsports, and we're ready to talk about it.
Absolutely. Great weekend at the racing capital of the world at IMS, and then also just down the road at Indianapolis Raceway Park, and we're going to get into all that here in just a few moments. But first, as always, want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark Robin, and David. Your support means the world to us. It's what allows us to continue to expand our coverage here at Grid Network. Joe Samniego will be back at Portland for the INDYCAR stuff going on there in just a couple of weeks' time. And as you can see, our goal is $500 a month, so we can do that on a little bit of a more regular basis. So if you like what you see tonight, you can join them in our Patreon, or if you'd rather just make a one-time donation, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below as well. All right, Brandon, I think we have to start with a bit of an open segment here. We don't have as much to cover tonight, but the hot topic, obviously, with the tire test today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval is, what does NASCAR do in terms of its relationship with IMS moving forward? Do they stick with this road course experiment that they've been running the last 3 years, or do they bring the Brickyard 400 back, the fourth crown jewel of a NASCAR Cup Series, and bring the Cup cars back to the Oval? So I want to hear from you. What's your take? We saw a very good race, I thought, all things considered, in the Cup Series this weekend. Certainly better than what we got in the previous 2 years. Does that change your mind at all about going back to the Oval in the Brickyard 400?
No. Yes. Wait, hold on. Let me start over. I already had something else in my head. So, yes, I want to go back to the Oval. And I think that's the clear consensus from everyone else. If you don't think so, please put in the comments why you don't want that to happen, because I think that's the silent minority at this point. This was a successful road course weekend, and it was a great race. Pretty uneventful as far as cautions go, and that's because of the no stage cautions, which helped out significantly, which we've been having on all the road courses on the calendar, and we're a big fan of that here. But it's time to go back to the Oval. We're approaching the 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400, and it's unfortunate that the past 3 years or so there hasn't been a Brickyard 400, even despite what Indianapolis Motor Speedway may tell you. We know this is not truly a Brickyard. It's when NASCAR goes to Indianapolis, it's at the Brickyard, but this isn't truly the Brickyard. It's the incorrect way, if you will. We need to be going the right way, which is left-hand turns, please, on the big course. But at the same time, I struggle with this, because I remember myself in 2019 harping with everyone else, saying, you know what, the Brickyard's got to go. We've got to do something here. Like, I didn't want to leave Indianapolis. No, I love the history, but something had to be done to change the Brickyard at that time. And we can't fault us in the past for making that decision, because it was right for that time to do something, because you had to do something. It was a disaster as far as what they were looking for with TV ratings and attendance, although TV ratings seem to really be the thing that pays the bill, no matter who you've got in the stands. But something had to be done at that time. So I don't want to go back and shame my opinion in 2019 for thinking that we need to go on the road course. But it's time to do something. It's time to come back. A lot has already been said about it. Some people are thinking, well, should we? They're already thinking it's going to be a dud as soon as we bring it back. So they're thinking, should we alternate year by year, road course, oval? No, that's not really a smart option to me, because the whole reason of being at Indianapolis is to be on the Oval. That's why we were there in the first place. The problem was that it's kind of lost its luster, because it was such a monumental thing for stock cars to be in IndyCar's realm. And so for that to happen in 94 with Jeff Gordon winning the inaugural event, that carried on for so long. And then most people will tell you the spot where it kind of fell off the cliff would be Tiregate. And if you don't know what that is, just go look it up and enjoy. But that's when the steady decline started to come. Yes, but guys, all the blown tires a decade and a half ago. Yeah, the blown tires. Yeah. That's exactly what you'll be pointing to. But I should stop talking. I need to hear Ben's side on this so we can keep going.
Well, I gave my thoughts yesterday on the wrap-up show, and I basically said the same thing. Like, it's time. And to be honest, it was time after the first year. With all due respect to AJ Allmendinger, Tyler Reddick, Michael McDowell, I think any win at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as a facility is a special one, no matter what series, no matter what class, no matter what layout. You're at the racing capital of the world. You cross that yard of bricks first, you've done something special. But I don't think you've done something nearly as special as winning the Brickyard 400. And it bothered me, and I know it bothered Matthew, who's in the chat here as well, that people started, again, no disrespect to Michael McDowell. He ran a virtually flawless race yesterday, deserves all the credit in the world. That team has come so far in the last couple of years. But he's not in this. I mean, you can't put this on the same level as Jamie McMurray won the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year, or all these guys that, the Jeff Gordons of the world, the Dale Earnhardts of the world that won both of these crown jewel races. Like, I'm sorry, it's just, it doesn't have the luster and the appeal of running the four-corner oval and running the Brickyard 400. And I think that it's great that we got a great race yesterday. I think, facility aside, oval road course debate aside, just solely judging yesterday's Cup race on merit, on what it was as a race, I thought it was very, very solid. I love that there were no stage cautions. There were still stage points awarded, which I still think messes up the strategy a little bit, but we'll get into that here later on in the show. But I got to give all credit to the Cup Series drivers for not making the same mistakes that they've made the last 2 years. And although we did see some spins and some action going on further down the pack, generally speaking, a very clean race. And I think especially with all the international media and all the international attention on all our international drivers that were in this race, it was very important not to make complete fools of ourselves this weekend with our series regulars and have a complete, farce, for lack of better terms, like we've gotten the last 2 years of how those races have played out. And we didn't get that yesterday, and I'm thankful for that. That doesn't change my opinion that we've done this experiment for 3 years. It's been whatever it's been. We're doing the tire test. Why would we be doing the tire test if there wasn't fire where there's smoke, so to speak? Let's go back to the oval. It's the 30th anniversary. There's not been a better time since we left. I understand. I'm with you, Brandon. Something had to happen. It was, I'm not convinced they're going to fill up all the seats like they did in 1994 next year if they go back to the oval, but I would hope they could draw a little bit bigger crowd. And the race, I think, was losing popularity in that regard, but I don't think the answer was cutting it from the schedule entirely. I was originally of the opinion that if you wanted to do something a little different, maybe we can do both. Maybe we can have a doubleheader weekend, and it's IMS. They can get the track converted very quickly. Let's run the road course on Saturday. Let's run the oval on Sunday, or let's run the road course 1 week, run the oval the next week. I didn't like what I saw from the first two versions of this race enough to do that. I think I'm firmly at this point in the crowd that says, let's just bring back the Brickyard 400. If we're going to be at IMS, we need to be turning left on the oval.
Now, I forgot my source on this, Ben. I believe it was Pete Pistone who said on Twitter to someone in response to, what if we just make it a weekend where we have the road course configuration and then the oval, that he heard from those who prepped the track that would not be a feasible operation to get it done that quickly. Forgive me, I forget who. I saw that on X today. I forgot exactly where that came from, but it was from a reputable source, and that kind of blew that out of my mind. But
yeah,
the Brickyard 400 is the crown jewel race. The Verizon 200 is not the crown jewel race. Michael McDowell is a fantastic race car driver on the road courses. He's got a shot to win this championship, I think, with the way he can drive the road courses alone. But it's not apples to apples. You can't play, like with Jamie McMurray, you can't place this with the same magnitude. Although they'll do what they will, but that's just not a good way to look at it. I am really influenced for some reason by David Land on his Indianapolis opinions, and he put out a great video just a while ago of how to fix the Brickyard 400. Yeah. And I'm sure you saw it. He bought a professor jacket just for the occasion and laid out exactly what you could do to make this race special again, make it where it's not just another event on the Cup calendar, something that actually has risk, has implications that aren't just based on your playoff format. And the biggest jarrer of them all was, let's make it a 33 car field, and if you're bumped, you have to leave. But with a charter system, you can't exactly do that. So he went more into that you could just give them the least amount of points that they would get, so they can be
give
be
the
happy.
first guy that misses the show, give him 34th place points. I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I think there's precedent for that. I'm thinking back to the inaugural truck race at Eldora. The truck field used to be capped at 36, or the time, I guess it is now once again, but the time was capped at 36. They only let 30 drivers start that truck race at Eldora. And that was a special race run under special rules for full points in the truck series, but it was a very special occasion and a very special track. They changed the rules slightly a little bit, and they shrunk the field size from 36 to 30. Why can't we do that here at Indianapolis if we get, let's say, 38 or 39, because you think a race like this, you're probably going to get a couple of open entries? Why don't we run 33 cars and no guaranteed spots? Run it like the Indy 500. Everybody has to qualify in on time. I think that would be, I mean, we talk about every May. Bump Day is almost as exciting as the 500 itself, right? I mean, the drama we've gotten several times in the last several years here. You contrast that to the Daytona duels. There's no reason for Chase Elliott fans to watch the duels, because they know where their drivers. They don't know where the driver's going to start, but they know their driver's going to be in the race. If you're a Scott Dixon fan, you don't know for sure your driver's. You think your driver's going to be in the race. He's won how many poles in the last couple of years? How many front row starts? But he has to go out there and lay down the laps to make it official, just like everybody else does. And that's part of what makes the Indy 500 so great. I think that would make the Brickyard 400 a very special event. But I would just be happy at this point getting it back on the calendar. Regardless of how you want to make it special, it would be special enough at this point just to have it back, because we haven't had it the last 3 years. I think it's time. A lot of people are itching to get it back, and I think the fan base is in a different spot than it was maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago when they were. Maybe 2008 was still fresh in people's minds, and know that people get tired of that argument. I think maybe there's something to that it just maybe fans that were in attendance that day, it stuck with them for a while, but maybe we needed to leave for a few years. But now that we have, let's leave it all in the past. Let's start fresh, and let's see if we can rebuild the tradition back again from the ground up.
I hope so, but I really don't think just you can bring it back as is for a year, but I really don't think that's going to be long mainstay power. If Doug Bowles and company can't do something to make this a race like none other, that show me why I need to buy a ticket, show me why I need to tune in, and make it like, if we had bump style qualifying, give me more reasons to tune in that weekend besides the Brickyard 400. Let's make this a big crown jewel event once again, just like the Coke 600.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think it can be just, it's not going to be just any other race because it's at IMS, but I don't think it can be run just as a normal race, because I think that's the danger that, we fell into when it was first on the calendar. And when you see the empty grandstands and the fans saying these races are pretty lackluster, it doesn't feel like a crown jewel race anymore, aside from the facility. I'd still think it felt more like a crown jewel than 2021 and 2022, especially. But even this year, you're going the wrong way down the main straightaway. And it frustrates me that Kevin Harvick is not going to get a final Brickyard 400, or that he ran his final Brickyard 500 not knowing that it was his final Brickyard 400. Did I say 500? I meant 400 if I did.
You said 400. You're good.
Yeah.
I think you did.
Yeah, thinking of Daytona and Indianapolis, it's all getting in my head here. But it's time. That's all there is to it. It's time to go back to the Brickyard 400, time to go back to the Oval. And one more comment from behind the mic here, and then we'll move on to cover the races. NASCAR and TV has to take some responsibility here too. Ken Squire always made the Michigan 400 in June feel important. You can't treat it like one of the 26 regular races. By the way, while we're on the subject of TV, Shane Van Gisbergen, I think, had a fantastic run once again in his second Cup Series start. We'll talk about him and his truck debut later on here in the show.
Shane Van Gisbergen begin.
Van Hamburger, right?
Burger.
Whatever Joey Logano said, right?
Right.
Man, I don't know. He said it for everybody this weekend, so it's beside the point. Let's move on here. Let's talk about the Indy NXT race real quick. Let's pull the results up there, and I'll go through these real quickly. Congratulations to Hunter McElroy closing the points gap a little bit to Christian Rasmussen who you see down there in 6th place. So McElroy gains quite a bit on that gap there. Had to earn it, though. He clashed a little bit with his teammate Louis Foster, who fell all the way down to 17th. So not a good result for him, but a good result for McElroy nonetheless. James Rowe finished in 2nd. Reese Gold rounded off the podium there in 3rd. Jacob Abel 4th. Kevin Simpson rounding out the top 5. We'll give a call to Jamie Chadwick as well. Her 4th consecutive top 10. She's moving up the point standings a little bit, getting better each and every weekend. That's what happened in Indy NXT. Now, 15 minutes down the road at IRP, congratulations to Jesse Love. I think we've said this before several times this year, winning yet another ARCA Menards Series event. But the big thing that stood out to me was this was a combo race with not just the main ARCA Menards Series, but also the ARCA Menards Series East. And with Luke Fenhouse finishing in 2nd, he gained in his points battle with William Sawalich, closing that gap a little bit. So the ARCA East standings, as much as Jesse Love has been dominating, running away with the big ARCA championship, ARCA East does still have an interesting dynamic with all their remaining races being combo races and a tight championship battle taking place in that division with Fenhouse and Sawalich. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. And again, we'll cover it like we always do here on the Grid Live Encore show. Now let's stay at IRP and move on to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. It was Ty Majeski taking the win. Kind of hard to believe. It kind of surprised me, even though we've been covering the series all year. His first victory of the year. I had to double check and make sure that was right, but it was his first win of the year. Brandon, are you surprised it took Majeski this long?
I am, but before we get into it, I just want to thank the folks at USRN for letting me on their broadcast this weekend. That was a whole lot of fun with IRP, and I have to give credit to Matthew Owens for my point here, actually, about this. He pointed out as soon as the checkered flag hit that this is exactly what happened last year for Ty Majeski. Very quiet throughout the year, but when it came time for the playoffs, had just enough points to be ready for the playoffs, was able to methodically win these short track events throughout the playoff calendar, which was just so meticulously placed for a short track ringer like Ty Majeski. And then by the time he gets to Phoenix, which is a Glenn Campbell song, he would have a good shot of winning the championship, because Phoenix kind of plays well to the short track ace in some ways on that track with its flat banking and everything like that. But yeah, I am surprised it took him this long to get there. He's had plenty of shots to do it so far this year. But he is a quality race car driver for Thor Sport, and they're all the better to have him with them. 2020 Snowball Derby winner, Slinger Nationals winner. He's a late model guy, and these kinds of tracks he excels in, and he's got a good run here for the title once again.
I apologize in advance if my internet is starting to cut out a little bit. I'm getting the notice I got yesterday, but it's dipping. Yesterday, my audio was fine all throughout the show, but my video froze up a little bit, so I apologize if that's happening once again. But Brandon, just to bounce off your point on Ty Majeski, that stood out to me as well. Last year, pretty quiet regular season, man. When we got into the playoffs, racked off a couple of wins and really started to look like a true championship contender. So he may very well be on that path again, and we'll just have to wait and see as we get further into these playoffs. It's, again, kind of hard to believe we're talking about playoffs already here in the middle of August, but that's how the Truck Series schedule is based.
Truck Series.
And that's where Ty Majeski is right now in his championship fight. Let's go to the opposite end of the top 20 here, talk about a driver that's made a lot of headlines over the last several weeks here in NASCAR, Shane Van Gisbergen, in his Truck Series and his oval debut in NASCAR. Was 19th a bit of a letdown given the expectations that SVG's had following his Chicago win, or is this, given how radically different this was from Chicago, about where you expected him to wind up?
This was perfect. A perfect first start on any oval for someone who's never done ovals before. This was fantastic for Shane Van Gisbergen. My bad. He was, and the best part about it, all of it, is that he's having a blast still. Just to see the smile on his face, he wanted to just finish, and he's fully capable of winning. But just having your first time on the oval, that was a great run, and just seeing the expression on his face was enough for me. 19th is nothing to lay your head down on. He's good to go, and definitely expect to see him back in an oval sometime soon. This is maybe less than what I expected. I don't know. I've been seeing, after seeing the wildness of SVG at Chicago, I was setting my bar maybe a little too high for his result at IRP, and I was also setting it high for what he would do at the road course for Indy, both a little bit lower than what I expected. But I was setting super high expectations after the first career victory in 60 years.
Yeah, go catch up on the chat here. I want to say hi to Casey Campbell. Hope you're doing well as well, Casey. And Adam Lummery's 19th for SVG. Nice debut. And Brandon, glad you enjoyed working with Matthew and Seth at USRN. And speaking of Matthew, my main takeaway was, again, how great IRP is. Xfinity needs to be back. That's where they belong. It's a 5-star track. Couldn't agree more. The Xfinity Series, as much as I'm sure those drivers have enjoyed getting to compete at IMS for the last several years, I think that series belongs at Indianapolis Raceway Park. And for SVG, I got to tell you, I was expecting a little bit better, but again, I think that's probably just the heightened expectations of how great he is at racing, generally speaking. But this was something completely different than what he's ever done, unlike Chicago, which is very similar to his day job, if you will, in supercars. And again, you want to talk about the worst kept secret being potentially the return to the Oval next year for the NASCAR Cup Series. I think maybe another worst kept secret, if you will, is what SVG is going to be doing next year, making this full-time transition over to NASCAR. It's just what series and with what team, that's the question mark for SVG. But again, I think 19th, he ran solid, brought the truck home in one piece. And the biggest thing, again, that stood out to me, like you mentioned, Brandon, was just to see him that happy and that excited. He genuinely looks thrilled to be here, and he looks like, it reminds me of Frankie Muniz in ARCA. This guy's not here to just, mess around and be a big name coming into something new for him and, just, run wherever and let that be that. He's here to compete, and he's here to win, and he's here to get better with every opportunity he has, and is very serious about this. And I think that's great to see for Shane Van Gisbergen.
Yeah, he's so elated. In fact, whenever Ty Gibbs flipped him the bird post race in the Cup race, he thought it was just a wave at him from the front. But anyway, another thing that Matthew noted on USRN on the broadcast was how out of breath he was in his interview, and you got to take that with consideration. This is a V8 supercar ace who is used to destroying his lungs inside a very hot box. And so for him who goes through much more on the other side of the planet, comes to the truck race at IRP and is out of breath, that's something to note for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. It's certainly, again, maybe it's just, muscle memory. It's something completely different, but it's still very physical and very hot inside these race cars and trucks. So that's something I'm sure SVG will get adapted to as he makes this transition. We expect him to make this transition over to NASCAR full-time in the not too distant future. So we'll see what comes of that. Let's talk briefly on the second half of the standings here. Let's talk about Hailie Deegan once again. Is it time to hit the panic button, Brandon? If you're Hailie Deegan, she got caught up in another accident with Greg Van Alst. And poor Greg Van Alst, he can't seem to buy a break with his recent endeavors here in this sport. But Landon Lewis getting caught up in that as well. And then Lewis, I think, taking out some payback on Hailie Deegan, ending her night down there in 31st place. What do you make of her season at this point? 3 years in?
I'm kind of sad about excuse me, I can't clear my throat right now. I'm kind of sad about having to come back to this topic again, because I feel like we just talked about it a couple of weeks ago or so. And honestly, I have no clear answer on what to do with Hailie Deegan's career right now. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to decide. But yeah, the panic button certainly has been a part of the equation this season. It's just, look, isn't she like the only Thor Sport truck that's not in the playoffs?
Full-time potential. I don't have the standings pulled up for me. I know that the 66 is a rotation of drivers, but
yeah, she's 19th. You say, I'm sorry, did you say the 13 has a rotation of drivers?
The 66 truck has a rotation of drivers.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, but if you're talking about full-time Thor Sport teams in the playoffs, that's
yes.
Yeah, so that truck wouldn't equate for that. But I know Crafton snuck in, obviously. Majeski and Rose would be the other one, right? So
right. And so yeah. But yeah, it's not a good situation at all. Not ready for the Xfinity Series. I mean, needs another year in trucks, I guess. But again, I'm glad I'm not the one making the decision, because it's probably really hard to handle that at ThorSport right now.
Yeah, well, Matthew Owen's saying as well, I think it may be beyond time to hit the panic button. That's a 13th straight finish outside the top 10 for, again, still only on one top 10 finish the entire season, a 6th place run at Texas earlier this year. And again, I brought this up last week as well. You want to know the last time we saw a stat line like that in that 13 truck at ThorSport Racing, which has been a perennial contender within a perennial championship contending team. That 13 truck alone, obviously what Johnny Sauter was doing in that in particular, but you got to go back to when Shelby Howard was in that truck in 2008. How about Willie Allen in 2007? Kerry Earnhardt before that in 2006. It's been a long time since this team and this truck number for ThorSport that has so much history attached to it has been running this poorly. And again, I think the future of Hailie Deegan is going to be very interesting moving forward here, because, I know we don't talk a lot about SRX on this show or on the Grid Network even this year, but a second place run there with who she's competing against, I think was a very solid night for her, and I want to give her credit for that. I think Hailie Deegan has talent that can be harnessed in some series somewhere that could lead to success for her. I don't know if that's in the NASCAR Truck Series at this point, almost 3 years into her truck career. And to be honest, I'm not sure if it's in NASCAR. I think Hailie Deegan's a talented young driver. I think there's a place for her somewhere. I think we've seen moments like that in SRX. We saw it a little bit as well in ARCA and K&N. But for whatever reason, you can't make the equipment excuse anymore when you're driving for ThorSport Racing and your teammate, Ty Majeski, just won this weekend. You've got championship contenders all throughout that team, all throughout the history of that team. To miss the playoffs by as much as she did and be running outside the top 10 almost every weekend this year, it's simply not good enough. And I think it's unfortunately time to be brutally honest about that. And, the jump to Xfinity doesn't make a lot of sense to me at this point. It would be one thing if Deegan were constantly getting caught up in incidents like this when she was running 5th or when she was running in or around the top 10 and consistently having her days ruined because the truck series is as chaotic as it is, then I think we can have that conversation. But I haven't even seen that consistently enough to make me think put her in a SHR or a Ford affiliated Xfinity car and it's going to fix everything. And she's as well as she did in her debut at Vegas last year. I don't know how sustainable that would be over the course of the season based on what we've seen in trucks this year with ThorSport. Man,
time flies. I can't believe she's been in the truck series that long. When you said 3 years, it felt like we just started a rookie season yesterday. I think she has potential with the dirt side of things. Okay, like that's where her win came from in ARCA, and that's where she had that success the other night with SRX. I also look at her sports car career with the Michelin Pilot Challenge. I think she had some great flashes in the pan, and the Rolex 24 weekend. I think it was just this year and also the year before she takes part in that with the Ford program.
Done it a couple times, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's also a great avenue for her to start considering as well. But yeah, I guess I hate being brutally honest, so I don't feel like doing it, but that's why we have people like you and others that are willing to lay the hammer down and say enough is enough.
Yeah, and I don't like doing it. I want to be very clear. I'm not, taking delight in Hailie Deegan not running well, because I still remember there was an article by Jeff Gluck in The Athletic, or maybe it was like his top 5 like mailbag questions or something that he was like a weekly feature. But I still remember him talking about, this was when Deegan was, I think, at the height of her, success in K&N. Maybe she had just won in Colorado, her 3rd and final win there. And he said, I don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say this. If Hailie Deegan makes it to the Cup Series and wins races, she could potentially single-handedly turn NASCAR back around in the right direction and be a mainstream sports superstar. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm seeing that in her future, at least anytime in the near future, based on how she's running trucks this year. So we'll see if she can turn it around. She's got a few more opportunities left to do so this year. And then, like I said, the future is going to be very interesting for her in 2024. I know there's the Xfinity rumors are probably going to come back again, but again, when you're running this far off the pace of your ThorSport teammates in the truck series, I just don't know if that's a wise jump to make.
Yeah, if she is destined for that Gluck prediction, it's definitely like a 10 to 15 year long road, and something drastically is going to have to change where she is, and the whole approach is going to have to change.
No doubt. All right, let's go back to the racing capital of the world and IMS and back to the road course. Let's talk about the Xfinity Series. And honestly, Brandon, I think it's good Josh isn't here tonight. I don't have too much to say about this race because it was dominated by a couple of Cup drivers, Ty Gibbs and AJ Allmendinger. Ty Gibbs ended up getting the win. Sam Mayer, however, let's give him a little bit of a shout out. The Road America winner passed AJ Allmendinger for second in the closing laps. And Brandon, I'll throw this first question over to you. Are you impressed by how well Mayer's continued to do, particularly on the road courses this year?
I am. That's a good run by that young man, and second there, and just winning at Road America, his first career victory. That's a lot of good stuff to be putting up, and hopefully it's going to be preserving his job at Junior Motorsports for a little while longer to make some more magic happen. I wish that he could have more success in other avenues. With Junior Motorsports' reputation on the super speedways, hopefully we can see some speed from the whole team. The whole team, that's kind of been Junior Motorsports has kind of been a topic this whole year as far as lack of presence, like at least how they were last year anyway. They really were on top of their game in 2022, and we haven't really been seeing that at the same height this year. But the ebb and flow of things, it's always changing, so you can't say that it's doomsday. But yeah, it's good to see him have the continued success there, but hopefully he can branch that out into other disciplines of the schedule too.
I have a comment here from Matthew saying, I'm sorry, I want so badly to be a fan of Ty Gibbs, but every time I get close to becoming a fan, he does something off-putting. What in the wide world of sports was he doing on the cooldown lap? Matthew,
I don't know.
That is an excellent question.
Getting in other people's way.
Excellent question there. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, getting in other people's way. Why didn't anybody stop him? And the next day goes and flips off Shane Van Gisbergen, and I just can't get behind that. I'm sorry. You can't wave the Christian flag and do that either. I'm telling you now, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't do that. That's double crossing. So
yeah, I think it was Michael Massey at Front Stretch wrote an entire op-ed or opinion piece last year, basically saying, coming from that perspective, Brandon, like you and like me as well, somebody who shares the Christian faith and is outspoken about it, and likes that aspect of Ty Gibbs, but doesn't like the fact that he tends to hide behind that when doing things like this. I got to say, I think it's less dangerous to flip the bird to a Supercars champion than it is to punt somebody going into the first corner of the final lap at Martinsville, in terms of actually getting somebody physically injured there. But, I'd rather see stuff like that outside the cars than using your car as a weapon that way. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've seen too much of that from Ty Gibbs this year compared to last year. But, still not a fan of those antics, and, of course, not a fan of how he did his burnout yesterday. I know he was very excited, but you can't be doing a burnout in the middle of the pack on a cool down lap, causing all this smoke to rise and other drivers not being able to see where they're going. That I wasn't a fan of that either.
I'm just thankful NASCAR kept him off the bricks. We don't want you on the bricks. You can do whatever you want. Just please stay off the bricks. Please have some respect for where you're at.
Yes. Well, I am not so thankful that he was even allowed to run this race. This was his 7th race of the year, and I had to go and remind myself that, oh yeah, he's technically a Cup rookie. The Cup rookies, what do they get? 3 years, I think, before they're subjected to the 5 race limit. So I think theoretically Ty Gibbs could be running as many races as he wants until we get into the playoffs, and I think the Dash for Cash races he's prohibited from entering as well. But I forgot that he was still even allowed to be in this race. It seemed like we'd seen him more than 5 times this year. And then they mentioned it's the 7th race, and I forgot. The 5 race limit doesn't apply to him yet.
Tell me, why is he able to pull 6 seconds, 7 seconds away from AJ Allmendinger? Why? How? How does that happen? How does that work?
Well, it works because he's got a lot of talent and he's in a very good car, but it's just, and again, you got to remember the kid's only 20 years old, so he does have some maturing to do, I think. And I hope he does, because he's a very talented driver. I think if he uses that talent correctly, he could be in the sport for a very long time and maybe even be a future Cup champion. But he's got to learn how to reel it in a little bit because his antics do get tiring sometimes.
Sorry for getting outbursting there. I was just speaking on behalf of Josh if he was here. That was just speaking out for him. You're welcome.
Yeah. No worries. And well, I will say right before we came on the air, I did see, I think AJ Allmendinger was on the preliminary entry list for Watkins Glen. I saw somebody in the comments say that that's going to be Kyle Busch because this was Allmendinger's 5th race in Xfinity this year, but Kyle Busch still has at least one start in hand. I know he was going to do Charlotte, but the race getting postponed to Monday meant that he wasn't interested in doing 900 miles in a single day, which is understandable, I guess. But we are still going to have a Cup driver in that Kaulig 10 car regardless, I think, this weekend. And the 17 is back as well, Alex Bowman in the Hendrick car.
Yeah, well, Kyle Busch also tweeted yesterday, I just don't know anymore, whatever that means.
Well, he's a bit of a slump in the Cup Series right now. He's had some poor finishes there. That getting lapped by Michael McDowell, I don't know if that was an ego thing or whatever, but
he's got, please. He has the most wins besides William Byron. He's fine. He doesn't need to be pouting.
Just gotta get to the playoffs and then turn it around there, and he can still go on a championship run.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the transition, because again, even though we got the races in on time and we don't have to cover the Cup race in as much detail, I know we talked about it a little bit at the beginning with the open segment, but we did have weather come back once again this weekend, and a lightning delay caused the Xfinity Series to be delayed for a little bit. The track was thoroughly wet throughout the delay, and then it started to slowly dry up. NASCAR threw the caution. Obviously, they had to for the lightning. When the race restarted, teams were put on wet tires. Drivers like AJ Allmendinger went on the dries almost immediately. And the changeover point was certainly very interesting there. I know, Brandon, you might talk about Parker Kligerman in your one shining moment here with how he ran and how he was expected to run based on his performance on the road courses earlier this season. But I always find myself a little frustrated that, and again, I guess when there's lightning, there's nothing you can do about it. But the fact that in NASCAR, we have to throw the yellow every time we get a change in conditions, whether it's dry or wet, because if you think in Formula One, it's up to the teams when they hit the crossover point and you don't need the safety car to come out. I guess they do it often enough that it's not an issue for them. But how would you assess how NASCAR handled the transition from the dry conditions to wet weather tires and then back to the dry conditions again? Is there anything you would change about their procedure there?
I think first I have to descramble my brain on this. So whenever the lightning came out, we were already on dries. We pulled them all into pit road.
Yes.
And everyone was required to put on wets, correct?
Right.
Okay.
NASCAR declared the track wet, and we went from there.
Okay. I guess that's fine. It's just as long as everyone was on that level playing field. I'm sure they keep the yellows out like that for safety reasons, but I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a tough question, I think, because we don't do it at most tracks, obviously racing predominantly on ovals. And again, like I mentioned, when there's a lightning situation, obviously that forces the race to be stopped for at least 30 minutes regardless. But, I think as we continue to test out the short track wet weather package and how many ovals can we push the rain tires onto and see if we can try to at least, if not race in the rain, race on a wet surface and lower the amount of delay time we have between drying the track. I think that, as this continues to become more common, NASCAR might be in their best interest to look into this procedure here and see how can we maybe make things run a little bit more smoothly in terms of just, making sure pit road is dry for the pit crews and everything. But I think they did, again, I think the weekend as a whole was very solid given how the last 2 years have gone here at this track. I think they handled it about as well as they could have. But again, this will go back to the point of no stage cautions. I still am not a fan of the stage points being awarded because I think it still alters the strategy a little bit and puts some drivers who want to pick up the stage points at a little bit of a disadvantage to, say, the Ty Gibbses and AJ Allmendingers of the world who don't have to worry about that because they're not running for Xfinity points. You saw drivers like the changeover period, I think, really happened a few laps before the stage break, but they wanted to keep their top 10 spots and get the stage points. So they ran a few laps at a disadvantage on the wrong tire so that they could hold on to their top 10 spots. and then come into the pits and then make the changeover. And Parker Kligerman obviously was one of them. He was able to rebound and get back into the top 10, but I think it maybe put him a little bit behind the 8 ball in the middle of the race because he sacrificed what was best for a full race strategy to pick up some stage points.
Yeah, and he also had that problem with the valve stem that cost him a lot of positions. And I don't remember if it was after that transition or not. That was back to the try. But yeah, it definitely added. I mean, I'm glad that we're able to do that change from we can keep the time when we're under wet, when there is rain in the area to keep it running smoothly. I'm losing my train of thought here, so forgive me.
No worries. Let's just talk about how clean the weekend was, and we'll show you the second half of the results here again. Brad Perez unfortunately got the NASCAR article this week, a couple months after he got the NASCAR sponsorship when we were out there at Sonoma. Certainly not the ending to the day that he wanted, but it wasn't an accident. It was a mechanical issue of some sort there. And that was predominantly what most of these retirements were here towards the back of the pack. And obviously in the Cup Series, the entire field, I think, within 3 laps of each other. I can't remember the last time we had that. So, Brandon, like we were talking about, like we've been talking about the last couple of years here on the road course, were you surprised at how clean both of these races ended up being, particularly the Cup race with a green flag stretch of almost 2 hours there at the end to close out the race?
I was surprised, and I was thankful that they were so clean. It actually made for some great long stretch racing, especially in the Cup Series, very long stint. And it was so much, in fact, that it was a story of just how many laps that they were in the car at one time, and asking drivers how that was with as far as endurance and everything like that. Because nowadays in stage racing, they're not really used to long, painful times going green flag in the car. Just really surprised with the Indy road course how clean it was, because that place has wreaked havoc on yellows for a Cup for all the time we've been participating. I'm really glad they fixed the sausage curb, and I can't really place where that turn is, but it's coming out to the back straight, the little kink there where that broke in 2021 and just caused a big mess back there. Yeah. I'm glad we've gotten past that. They've kind of smoothed that curbing out. Just really glad that it was clean. And I think it is, you can attribute it being clean all to the fact that there was no cautions at the stage breaks, because that bunches the field back up. And it's ironic that they were making that restart. They're moving back the restart zone for here too. And you didn't need that at all, because it turned out fine. But even if we had, I think that the problem is not where the restart zone is, it's having yellows after your stage breaks. And that's what really bunches the field back up and puts them back in double file and makes people hungry, and it was sent us into NASCAR overtime and yada, yada, yada. I'm glad there was no overtimes to speak of. That was the best part.
Yeah, well, and again, I think the restart zone being where it was played no small role in that. But like you mentioned, in the Cup race in particular, didn't really need it all that often, aside from the opening incident there with Justin Haley. Very clean race all throughout. And but even then, it still wasn't impossible to have some shenanigans going on down in the first corner. We saw that a couple of times, but nothing anywhere near the level that we saw the last 2 years. And then obviously the curbing. I want to say hello to, I think, a new viewer here, NASCAR the Great. Good to see you. Hello. And turns 5 and 6, I think, was the section that you were referring to, Brandon, there with the curbing incident that we had a couple of years ago. Thankfully, nothing like that this year. So all in all, hopefully, again, in our humble opinions, I think Pete Pistone was also running a poll on Twitter. Brandon, I know you're mentioning some sort of tweet or conversation you were seeing over there. He ran a poll, road course or oval, very simple. And it was like 83% oval, 17 road course. So 5 out of 6 NASCAR fans seemingly want to go back to the oval. So I guess I can say I speak for the majority when we see, hopefully, we've put the finishing touches on this experiment here, and we're going to bring the Brickyard 400 back next year, and that'll be it for the IMS road course, at least on the NASCAR side of things. So we'll see and wait for that to be made official. But I think that's where most fans are, like we mentioned at the start of the show.
Yeah, that's where my source came from before, was the Pete Pistone poll. There was in the comments below. Yeah.
All right, well, Brandon, before we close out the show tonight, I want to hear from you on your one shining moment. I think I spoiled one of them, but as I understand it, I think you have a few to talk about.
Yeah, and the one you have is also definitely high up on the list too, if you didn't have it. Parker Kligerman, if you remember several weeks back, I said if there's any shot that Parker Kligerman has to win his way into the playoffs, it would be at the IMS Road-Course. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for him, and so I don't get prediction bragging rights, but that's okay. Has still had a great weekend, finished 7th, and by all intents and purposes, he should have not finished 7th. He had terrible luck coming out of pit road with that valve stem on the tire, and was dropped all the way back and clawed his way back up. Just showed the raw talent he has at these road courses, and with Big Machine, hats off to them, the Tennessee team there, getting up back in the top 10 and finishing with a really good day. Graham Rahal is another one. I have multiple ones again because there's just a lot of good things going on this week. Graham Rahal, of course, that amazing story from, TV loves it, going from not qualifying for the Indy 500 to coming back for the Gallagher Grand Prix and going on the pole, and then having to battle Scott Dixon. That was such a great, intense battle. He was battling with the best. Couldn't get there, but Scott really is that good, and so nothing he could have done for him. But still, great job for Graham Rahal. Still has to be positive after this. That win's coming, Graham. Don't worry. But that was a great performance. And also, no stage yellows was fantastic, and no overtime. It's a good weekend for us around here at Grid Live Encore.
Yeah, no doubt. Completely echo everything you said there, and all those shining moments are great. I want to go back to the truck series, though. Give a shout out to the guy that finished third, Lane Riggs, a former weekly series champion. Had a lot of success at that level, and having a lot of success in the truck opportunities that he's getting. I was listening to Sirius XM on my drive home this weekend, or drive home tonight, I should say. Dave Mooney made a comparison that I think you might be interested in hearing, Brandon. He said he thinks Lane Riggs might be the next Josh Berry. Very high praise, I think, for the son of Scott Riggs and former weekly series champion who's off to a great start in the opportunities he's gotten in the NASCAR trucks.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison from the Godfather. And also, he's got, just from his emotions from that post-race interview, he seems like he's got a lot more drive than Josh Berry. I don't know. Maybe Josh just doesn't show it, but Lane Riggs looks like he came from the local short track down the street, and he's just tickled to death with the idea that he could possibly advance in his career. And so I'm all for that kind of excitement. I'm excited for him and for the whole Riggs family, and best of luck to him.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll be following Lane's career here. Hopefully he gets more opportunities in the trucks, because I think based on his performance, he definitely deserves it. That's my one shining moment, and that is our show this evening here on Grid Live Encore. So thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to Grid Network here on YouTube. If you haven't already, follow us on all our social media platforms as well. X, that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, and like I said, most importantly, right here on YouTube. Join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers. If you really like what you saw tonight, you can take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon. Join Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, and David in investing in Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2023. Our long-term goal of $500 per month will allow us to begin attending races on site on a more regular basis, expanding our coverage for you, the viewers. If you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit Buy Me a Coffee. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Now, looking ahead to our upcoming schedule, on Wednesday, don't miss Grid Tonight with Josh, Kobe Lambeth, and Matt White. I believe Jackson Lambros will be making a guest appearance as well to discuss the ongoing Alex Palou situation with Ganassi and McLaren. And, of course, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this upcoming weekend. As always, Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for the evening?
I instantly forget everything that's going on. We go to Watkins Glen. Yes, Cup and Xfinity, Watkins Glen. Trucks are out. They'll go back to Milwaukee when we in a couple of weeks. Lane Riggs Nesquik throwback. When do we get that? That's all I have.
Would love to see it. I'm going to talk about a different sport here real quick because I can't resist. I'm so excited. I thought about making the drive home for it. Philadelphia Union take on Lionel Messi and Inter Miami CF in the Leagues Cup semifinals tomorrow. And Brandon, I don't know if you've been following along, but your Nashville SC take on Monterey on the other side of the bracket. We could have a Philadelphia Union Nashville SC Leagues Cup final match. That would be exciting for us on Grid Live Encore, I think.
I would be watching it. I have not been following their season at all, but I would be watching that if they're playing the Union.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be a tough task, I think, for the Union tomorrow night, but I wish I could be there. I'm sure Subaru Park's going to be going crazy, but we'll keep you updated on that because that might be, especially if both our teams win, the final is going to be very interesting for the two Grid Live Encore hosts. But we'll keep our eye on that just as we keep our eye on all the series we cover here on Grid Live Encore, and we'll be back next week. And one more comment before we sign off. Brandon shined on Friday night on USRN. It was a ton of fun. So high praise there from Matthew Owens there for you, Brandon. For Brandon Crossland and Josh Birch, who's off tonight, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.